What's up, everyone, and welcome back to the BallGame podcast. Week 4 of the NFL season is here. We are in the thick of things. Fantasy football is ramping up. Some of us are 3-0 going into this week. Others could be 0-3. We need to nail these start-sit decisions. We want to either stay at the top of the standings or work our way up. I'm Chris.
I'm Matt.
And we're just going to get right into it. You guys responded well to our start-sits last week. I think I did pretty good. And
I had a few of I had moments. CJ Stroud, I nailed. There were a few that I did well on, and then there were a few that were not.
And I want you guys to know that we're not just saying this shit. We're doing this shit. Because my start of the week at running back was Javonte Williams, and that was a fucking miss. But I didn't tell you guys to start him, and I didn't start him. I started him in all the leagues I had him over Deontay Johnson, and it fucking burned me. It burned me bad. In my one league that I was 0-2, and I made 3 trades going into the week, my team put up 170. I lost by 19 points.
Oh, God, bro.
And I had Deontay on my bench for Javonte, which was a 20-point difference. I would have won. Put up 170. I played a dude, Antonio Sainz. Shout out Antonio. Because I would have completed the perfect 4 against him. I played against him in 4 leagues last week.
That's
somehow,
crazy.
some way. Yes. And I beat him in 3 of them. I got my first win in our Dynasty League, the new Dynasty League. Shout out to Jordan Mason. Shout out to all those guys. Shout out to Deontay Johnson because I started him there. But he traded earlier in the week, I don't even know what the trade was, but it was like a bag of chips basically for Josh Allen and Malik Neighbors. He put up 190 to my dome. Nothing I could do.
Nice.
I was the second highest scorer of the week, still 0-3. So just got to stay the course. That's fantasy football, man. But we just get right into it, going position by position. Starting at the quarterback position, my start of the week is Caleb Williams. This is a guy who you might be able to nab off waivers still, especially in one quarterback league, especially in those 10-man leagues. He had a great game last week for fantasy football. He put up points, which a lot of quarterbacks aren't doing.
That's all that matters.
No. They have no run game, and the dude threw the ball 52 times. I don't expect that level of volume to continue, but he's going to be up there amongst the league leaders in pass attempts this year if they continue to have no run game. That's just the way it's going to work. So
Sean's going to save their
hopefully, because that's another guy I have in one of my dynasty leagues, so that'd be cool. But if it keeps up like this, he's going to keep throwing the ball, which whether he's a good quarterback or not, if he's throwing the ball that much, it will lead to volume in fantasy football. And he gets a matchup right now against the Rams defense that is struggling, especially on the back end. They're giving up the second most points to quarterbacks right now in fantasy. They're bottom 5 in PFF coverage grade as a team. They're weak. They're young. And I think Keenan Allen's back this week, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe he is set to be.
Yeah, Keenan should be coming back. Cole Kmet had a breakout game last week. Rome had a breakout game last week. It was coming together for the pass catchers. It came together a little bit for Caleb. And he gets a favorable matchup here. So I expect him to build off it and kind of continue in a upward trending direction.
Yeah, my start of the week is, I completely agree. I think Caleb's going to be a much better fantasy player in the coming weeks than he may necessarily be as an NFL.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who, even if you're not going to start him this week, probably stash him because I'm pretty sure their upcoming schedule is really favorable for him. Yeah, so
their upcoming schedule is the best, is arguably the best in the league for wide receivers and quarterbacks.
Let me try and find it real quick, and I'll just run it off. So they have, oh my gosh, Rams, Panthers, Jaguars, Commanders, Cardinals, and then the Patriots after that. But that's 5-game stretch right there. Rams, Panthers, Jaguars, Commanders, Cardinals. Those should all be boom weeks for Caleb. So even if you're not going to start him this week, even if you need to see it one more week, this is a guy who probably stash him now so no one else gets him.
I agree. I definitely agree. So I'm going to turn my attention to a former fantasy superstar that maybe hasn't done everything possible in fantasy, but he has been exactly what they've asked for. And it's Justin Fields. And I personally think this is the week for Justin Fields to show out and be a fantasy menace once again. So Indy's already had struggles against the run. It actually led me to have my DeAndre Swift start of the week last week, which absolutely missed, might I add. But Justin Fields last week ended up having 19.4 points. He passed the ball way more than he had in the previous 2 games. It seemed like the playbook started to open up quite a bit for him, and he was very efficient, and he was awesome. Quite frankly, he was. I think he's going to be great on the ground. I think the playbook will only continue to expand against a weak Indy defense that's already set to miss Kenny Moore, I believe Eric Armstead is going, or DeForest Buckner, sorry, the other former 49er, is going to be missing this game as well.
Latu got hurt too.
Latu got hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're dealing with a whole bunch of injuries. Zaire Franklin was talking shit about the terrible towels and the Steelers. Yeah, it's the day of reckoning for the Indianapolis Colts, and I think Justin Fields is going to be at the head of that. So I would start Justin Fields with full confidence this week, especially because of the rushing upside. So
Yeah, no, he was my second guy. You mentioned it. All that stuff about him being great is cool. When I look at it, it's start your guys when they play the Colts.
Yep.
It's as simple as that. We've been saying it since week one. This Colts defense it's fantasy heaven. It really is.
It is.
It really is. And I'll just throw it out there now because I don't have him on my list. But a guy like George Pickens, if you're considering benching him, don't bench him. He's been so close to having huge games, and if he was ever going to have a breakthrough game, it's this one.
Yep.
It's this one. So do not bench George Pickens, please. Please don't bench him. But going into the sits, I'm running it back because this was probably my best pick last week. So I'm sitting Anthony Richardson again. And, I just mentioned my start of the week. I'm 100% starting Caleb over Anthony Richardson this week. And I'm not thinking twice about it. There was all these guys on the waivers in the beginning of the season, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield, Derek Carr. I think all of these guys I feel more comfortable. Justin Fields, all of these guys I feel more comfortable starting over Anthony Richardson right now. He put up 5 points last week, I think. He's just not been good throwing the ball. It's as simple as that. I saw a stat last night. He's completed about 67% of his passes, 50-plus yards. He's completed 62% of his passes behind the line of scrimmage. And obviously, it's a little bit of a volume thing. Obviously, he's throwing short more. That's just nature. But I don't know if there's any other quarterback that has that type of split. It's just insane. I mean, I could be wrong, and he could hit Alec Pierce for 2 bombs in this game. If he does, I'll take my L.
Or run for 80.
Yeah, I'll take my L there. But he's been struggling, and this is not the matchup that he's going to bounce back, I don't think. Going up against probably by far the best defense in the NFL right now in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Yeah. So I think A-Rich will bounce back at some point, and he'll put some games together. But this isn't drop Anthony Richardson, but there's better options out there for you on the waiver wire right now. I don't think he's going to have his bounce back against this defense.
Yeah, I agree. I would most likely start both of the guys that we mentioned over Anthony Richardson. And it's crazy to say this one as well, because when you hear this name, he's the best quarterback in the NFL. It's Patrick Mahomes. Look, I understand that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league, but that just simply has not translated to fantasy football success. Over his last 17 games, this man has gone over 20 points 18% of the time. 18% of the time. Patrick Mahomes is no longer the fantasy superstar you all think and draft him to be. And not to mention, this is going to be a phenomenal matchup for them to just continuously run the ball and take the ball out of the air. It's against the Chargers, who don't have Herbert. They're not going to have to do too much. So if you end up with a Chargers team that starts Taylor Heineke, I could promise you right now, Patrick Mahomes will likely not be throwing the football much after the half. So I would
Big
do
Kareem
all I
Hunt
can.
game coming?
Maybe a big Carson Steele game on the ground. So, but yeah, I would strongly suggest sitting Patrick Mahomes, and in our case, I would strongly suggest starting Justin Fields. For me personally, I do actually have this exact situation. I just picked Justin Fields up in a league that I have Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to be starting him over Patrick Mahomes. So
We've that one underdog league we did with all of us that we were drafting, and I think you both of them.
Bro. Oh my God, I was at Six Flags when we did that draft, and I accidentally drafted Mahomes and Anthony Richardson, and I don't think it's doing that, but I think it's middle of the pack right now, that team somehow, but. Oh God.
Yeah, and then I completely agree with you. If you could get one of these guys we mentioned, a Caleb, a Justin Fields, I'd strongly consider starting them over Mahomes this week. It's a tough thing to do. You got to have a big set of balls on you to do that shit. Like you really do. You really do. Because Mahomes could burn you. Yep. Like he could burn you. But the logic is there. it makes sense. So I like that pick.
Results, I guess.
Yeah. And then moving on to the running backs, this is another guy who, if you guys are following us, you've heard me talk highly of his fantasy outlook going for a while now. I got nervous last week. I'm not going to lie. My start of the week at running back, Jerome Ford. It got really sticky there in week 2 against the Giants. He only saw 44% of the snaps. He didn't see as many rushing attempts as Deontay Foreman. Sorry. I get Foreman and Royce Freeman confused.
Well, they're both awful.
Yeah. And I don't know. They're probably the same player, honestly.
They basically are.
But and then we saw this week he got 79% of the snaps. In week 1, it was 75%. So I'm just going to think week 2 was just a little bit of an anomaly. This is a guy who I've mentioned time and time again. He's one of the better pass-catching running backs we have in the NFL. And he's going against the Raiders, who are allowing the 7th highest rushing EPA per play and the 3rd most fantasy points to running backs so far this season. So I think Jerome Ford will have a big game here today. Not today, tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's still scary as a Jerome Ford owner in a couple leagues. I kind of fear the backfield there. I just don't know how to feel with it. But one backfield that is definitely becoming more clear by the day is the Cincinnati backfield. I think everyone should be starting Zach Moss by now, and I don't think there should be any hesitation. I think Zach Moss has basically become the ideal RB2 in most settings, and I think he's going to have a great week against Carolina. And over the last 2 games, the man has had 79% of the snaps. He's clearly taken over the job in Cincy. So I think Zach Moss against the bad Carolina rushing defense, I think both of those things work well for him, and I think he's going to have a great game. So I think everyone's very relevant in this game, to be honest, on both sides.
Yeah.
On both sides, I think everyone is very relevant in this game. So for once, you want pieces in a Carolina game.
Yeah, no, Zach Moss was definitely a guy I was considering here, and I thought about it. You guys shouldn't be playing fantasy football if you weren't starting Zach Moss already. Yeah, honestly,
that was a good point.
Like he's been solid. He's clearly the RB1 in this offense, and this is a very favorable matchup. So fire up Zach Moss everywhere you can. Bet on Zach Moss. Take his rushing props. Probably take him as an anytime touchdown scorer too. It's going to be a huge Zach Moss week for sure. Moving on to my sits of the week, and sits plural. It's 2 of them because I don't even know who's going to be the starter. I don't know if Ken Walker is still questionable. I don't know if we know yet if he's playing, but I'm sitting the Seahawks running backs. Ken Walker, if he plays, I'm not too fond of a guy coming off of injury. And then Zach Charbonnet. If Ken Walker's not there, Zach Charbonnet's just not a good football player. That's what it is. He's been good for fantasy so far because he scored a few touchdowns. Yeah, he scored a few touchdowns, but he's just hasn't been efficient. He's averaging 3.5 yards per carry. I think that's really bad. And he's going against the Lions, who have been by far the best run defense in terms of stopping fantasy points. They allow 5.3 points per game to running backs. The next lowest is 7.7. And my sit of the week last week at running back was James Conner going up against the same defense, and I mean he was a non-factor in that game. So I think this. I'm gonna keep saying it. This Lions run defense is legit, and given that Ken Walker's coming off an injury and Zach Charbonnet is just bad, I'm not starting either of them.
Yeah, I completely agree. And Ken Walker has currently logged 2 limited practices back-to-back. Don't love that.
Yeah, he'll probably play. If he's practicing limited, he'll probably play.
He'll probably play, and it'll be that just makes the situation
it makes it even worse. Yeah, makes it even worse. So, yeah, I'm benching both of them.
I would most definitely bench both. So, for me, it's the end of an era in Tampa Bay. Sit Rachaad White.
Let's go.
Sit Rachaad White, because the sun goes down on Rachaad White, but the sun rises on an Oregon star.
Let's go.
It is Bucky time.
It's Bucky season. Let's fucking go, bro. I'm hyped.
He's simply so superior as a running back to Rachaad White. And as much as we may have wanted to blame it on Tampa Bay's run game, no. Bucky Irving has proven that it is most definitely not just the run blocking. It is simply Rachaad White being bad at football. And not to mention, Bucky Irving has the profile. He's not large, but he has the profile that it also includes pass catching.
Yeah.
Not only can he take the rushing from Rachaad White, who is a pure volume play on a weekly basis, he could take the superpower of Rachaad White too, which is receiving work. I don't necessarily think Rachaad White gets completely phased out, but when you get a timeshare, you want the explosive guy. You want the guy who could average 5-6 yards per carry. And Bucky Irving is capable
averaging like
of that.
7 yards per carry right now in the season. Yeah.
Bucky is more than capable of doing that. He has more, I think it was more or the same number of 30-plus yard runs already than Rachaad White has in his entire career.
That's nuts. That's nuts.
On over 450 carries.
Yeah, no, this is the one that makes me happy, man. I mean, I have Bucky Irving in Dynasty, so I'm praying for it, man. I'm coming, bro. I'm going to get my first win soon. Yeah. It's coming.
I don't necessarily suggest starting Bucky Irving yet.
Well,
I think you got to wait and see. I think you got to wait
It's Bucky Irving or Kareem Hunt
you
for
really
me.
have no choice. You really have no choice, but sit Rachaad White. Sit Rachaad White.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Moving on to the receivers, this is a guy who hasn't really been on my radar. I don't have him in any leagues, but he's a guy who I kind of wish I did have in some leagues to be a flex play. It's Khalil Shakir, man, and he looks like he's Josh Allen's number one weapon. Josh Allen clearly trusts him, and the man is just dynamic with the ball in his hands. He could take any play to the crib. They could be 99 yards out. They could be 1 yard out. The guy could get in the end zone. It's that simple. He makes guys miss. The Ravens' defense hasn't been all that this year, just in terms of some stats. They allow the fourth most points per game to fantasy wide receivers, and they're a bottom 10 unit in terms of PFF
They've
coverage
been flat
grade.
out bad.
Yeah, I mean, Marlon Humphrey just isn't the same he was. Nate Wiggins, a rookie, obviously it's going to take some time. So I think Khalil Shakir is going to, right now he's the wide receiver 19 on the season. He's coming off a 19-point game where he got into the end zone. Saw 6 targets in that game. So I think Khalil Shakir is going to keep up the play that he's at, and he's a pretty solid flex play this week, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree. Okay, mine's a little bit of a cheat because I don't think anyone's benching him anymore. It's Juwan Jennings. It definitely is a cheat after the big time week that he had last week. I'm not expecting another 47-point game. But what I'm here to tell you is Juwan Jennings, especially because I think Debo and George Kittle are going to probably be back, but limited. They're not removing him from the game plan anymore. Brock Purdy definitely just fell in love with this man. And Juwan Jennings has long been a very capable wide receiver. I don't think Jennings gets completely phased out of the game plan for a couple reasons. Debo's going to probably be limited. Brandon Ayuk is throwing fits on the San Francisco 49ers practice field.
Don't even get me started on that.
And all this opens up another lane for Juwan Jennings to get playing time. And every time this man gets playing time, he proves he's a good NFL wide receiver. I think he's a capable flex start because I know people are going to see Debo and see Ayuk and see Kittle and think, we got to sit this guy. It's not time yet. I promise you, I think Juwan Jennings has at least one more capable fantasy flex week in him. And if any of these guys are injured and miss, he's a wide receiver too in fantasy football. So I really do think he's a very talented receiver, and he's a quarterback's best friend. He always gets open.
Yeah, I mean, This is a guy who's not just coming off a great week. He's coming off one of the greatest fantasy performances of all time. Yeah. So obviously, it'll scale back a little bit, but still, if it scales back a little bit, from 46 points to maybe 30 points?
Even if
you know what I mean?
14 or 15 in a flex spot. In a PPR.
This is a guy who, after a game like that, I mean, we talk about it with another 49er. We talk about it with, like, Jordan Mason when we expect Christian McCaffrey to come back. The guy's been so damn good that he has to be a part of the offense. Yes. Juwan Jennings, in that one game, was so damn good that he just has to be a part of this offense going forward. And you mentioned it, Debo and Kittle, they may or may not play. If they do play, they're going to be limited. Brandon Ayuk, like you mentioned, just hasn't been himself so far. So
he looks awful.
They're going to need Juwan Jennings. So yeah, I think that's a good play. I wish I had him last week in some leagues for sure.
Oh my God, man.
Yeah, but moving on to the sits, another guy who I don't have in any leagues, but if I did, I would not feel happy if I had to start him. It's Jameson Williams. Listen. Week 1 was great. Week 1 was a good time for Jameson Williams, shooters, man. And I hope you guys all took your victory laps.
Yeah. Take victory laps.
And then in this game, he got, 3 targets, I think, in the game. He was just a non-factor in the game. And this is a game that they won, and everyone kind of ate. Amon-Ra ate, the running backs ate. Laporta didn't really, but that's a whole other thing. Now he's hurt. But, I mean,
apparently playing.
Yeah, this is a guy he's a boomer bust play for me. And that's, week 1 was never sustainable, in my opinion. 9 targets in this type of offense was never sustainable. Maybe he'll have games where he gets that type of, just given the matchup, but I don't think this is the matchup for him. The Seahawks are one of 3 teams that allow less than 10 points per game to fantasy wide receivers, and Tariq Woolen looks like he's back to form right now. He's the 12th highest graded corner so far on PFF, and he's allowing a 7 passer rating when he's targeted. And this is a guy who just, forget about the skill and the PFF coverage grade. This is a guy who just has the athletic ability to stop a Jameson Williams. He has the speed. Obviously, he's probably the fastest corner in the NFL. And he has the length and reach. Like, if JMO does beat him by a step or whatever the case may be, like, he could catch up to the play. He's playing like a top 5 corner in the NFL right now. If the Seahawks are playing a lot of, like, manning up or whatever, Reek will be on that side of the field with J-Mo Williams, and they're going to make sure that J-Mo doesn't burn them over the top. So I think it's a bad Jameson Williams week this week.
Yeah, Seattle's secondary is stacked, and Mike McDonald knows how to get the most out of every single one of them. Okay, so for me, little red flag glowing from yesterday. Chris Olave injured his hamstring in practice. So this may be a bit of a cheat, given that he had an injury yesterday. But I am warning you that if he does play, given the injury happened yesterday against the Atlanta Falcons secondary, which is still very capable, A.J. Terrell being one of the better corners in the entire NFL, the last thing I would want to do is start my number one wide receiver banged up going into a game against one of the best corners in the NFL. So I'm steering clear of Chris Olave this week. I actually have him in a couple leagues. I've been a big fan of Olave. Was very happy for the breakout week after on our Patreon I talked about going to trade for him before it happened. I just think it wouldn't be a smart move this week to start him if he is playing. So keep an eye on that situation. If he's out, obviously you're not going to be having him in the lineup anyway. So
Khalil Shakir, Chris Olave this week.
Khalil Shakir.
Cool. Nice. Moving on to tight ends, I have to right my wrongs, man. I made a mistake last week. Mike Gesicki had a monster game. 4 catches for 47 yards.
He was
And what do you mean, Chris? 4 catches for 47 yards? That's not a monster game. Look at the tight end position in fantasy football. We take that 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah.
And I thought it wasn't a favorable matchup for him last week, but he still got his. Shit, I'm taking 8 points from my tight end every single time, and this is a guy who has massive touchdown upside. He could go for 2-3 touchdowns in any given game.
And he's involved.
Yeah, and there's just not that many guys who we know are going to, at the tight end position, are pretty much guaranteed 4 to 6 high-quality targets from one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So I think Mike Gesicki, it's actually a crime that he really wasn't drafted anywhere. No one was drafting him, and it just really didn't make no. And during draft season, that was always something in the back of my mind too. Like, why aren't people drafting him? Why? Like, I've
been the biggest Gesicki supporter and didn't mention him.
And it's not just us. Like, obviously, we all listen to all other fantasy podcasts. Like, no one was talking about him. No one at all that
Unless
I saw.
It was like a really deep. Maybe off the waiver wire after.
Yeah, so that I think that was just an overall miss by the entire fantasy community. But this is a guy who, going forward, you should plug into your lineup as your tight end and really not have any concerns.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Gesicki is one of the better pickups for managers too right now because, look, the tight end position has just been a crapshoot. It really has. All year. You're probably getting a bunch of guys from the waiver wire. If you're streaming the position, sometimes it's been better than if you were picking one of the top 5-6 guys. That's how bad this position has been so far this year. With that being said, I am not happy necessarily with my start of the week. Another guy coming off a massive week, it's Cole Kmet going up against the Los Angeles Rams. I do think they found something with this here. I do think that Caleb is going to feel a little more comfortable throwing to a guy like Cole Kmet after seeing what he's capable of I don't think that goes away. That's got to become a tendency for a rookie quarterback. You got to rely on your tight end a little bit, especially when he is as capable as Cole Kmet is. Cole Kmet is a great talent. I don't think there's any doubt about that. It's just the problem is there are so many mouths to feed around him. I think Caleb found a potential go-to guy here, and that may become a consistent thing. I think that it's quite possible that he's ending up with 5 or 6 targets every single week. And it's just a consistent 4 catches for, as you said, 48 yards. If you give
and
me
maybe
9
a touchdown,
points,
yeah.
and maybe you get
you give me a touchdown with that, you're the tight end 4 on the week.
Exactly.
And we take that. We take that every time. That's the difference between winning and losing a week right there. Like it's as simple as that. And this is a guy who last week he had 11 targets, and that's just in fantasy football, in full PPR leagues, a guy getting 10 plus targets is something you just can't scoff over. Like you have to, pay attention to that and keep that on your radar. So do I expect Cole Kmet to be a 10 plus target guy every week going forward? No. But like we just said, he's fine with 6 targets, 4 catches for 40 yards.
And he's out there even more now.
Yes.
Like Gerald Everett was the original guy getting a lot of snaps, which was a massive mistake.
It's shifting, yes.
It is completely shifted. It's basically heading in the Cole Kmet direction fully, as it should, and I think that's going to be something that continues.
For sure. That's a good pick. Moving on to my sit, I don't know how many of you guys are actually starting him. Probably a select few of you, only the few of you that have Trey McBride. But I'm telling you, this is a mistake. Do not pick up his backup, Elijah Higgins, and start him. Elijah Higgins just isn't the talent that Trey McBride is. It's as simple as that. And when we got guys on waivers this week, like a Cole Kmet, he was out there on waivers for people to pick up. Yep. Mike Gesicki may have still been out there on waivers for you to pick up. Elijah Higgins just isn't going to step in and be Trey McBride. So I think there's just better options out there for you. So I don't know exactly how many people were picking up Elijah Higgins and starting him. But again, the tight end position's so rough that I was kind of struggling to find a sit. So this is one where it's just like, don't make a silly mistake here. Don't make a silly mistake here. So.
Yeah, for me, I feel the exact same way as you, where it's like most of these guys in the top 8-ish, I'm not telling you to sit.
Right.
Because you really shouldn't sit them.
Right.
You don't really have what's the word? You don't have the ability to necessarily sit these guys because who's your backup? And who are you going to confidently start over one of them? So for me, I didn't end up going with any of them. I went with a guy that you may still potentially hold out hope for, and it's Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz plays a whole lot of snaps, but really is just doing a whole lot of cardio. But here's the problem. I actually should have made him. I honestly, can I flip this? Can I make him a start of the week after talking about him? This may be the first time that I've ever wanted to flip a guy.
If you want. He was my start of the week last week, Dalton Schultz.
After thinking about it, I'm giving you a second tight end start of the week, and I'll figure out another sit.
And Tank Dell's out.
I just realized Tank's out. Nico's banged up. Start Dalton Schultz. CJ Stroud and him are familiar with each other, and the tight end position sucks. So please start Dalton Schultz this week. I originally had it forgetting that Tank Dell and Nico were going to be out, or Nico's not out, but he's going to probably be limited. And now I'm thinking about it like, wait a second. No. Now you have 2 starts of the week at the tight end position, so consider that. Consider yourself lucky. My sit of the week is a guy that maybe you had some hope for. It's Colby Parkinson. I don't know how many people are actually starting him, but I know some people were considering it last week. Some people plugged him into their lineups last week, thinking about no other weapons around. Maybe Stafford's going to rely on a guy who's going to be out there a ton, who is out there a ton in Colby Parkinson. Don't fall into that trap. I know he's getting dropped a lot, which is a good thing. Continue that trend. Don't plug the guy into the starting lineup. He's not at all dynamic. Keep him out the lineup. So Colby Parkinson. That's where we've come to with tight ends.
Now, it's telling people to sit. It's rough out here.
Colby Parkinson. Because I don't have the balls to tell people to sit Mark Andrews at this point.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's that. Enjoy week 4 of football, everyone. Sit red zone, watch red zone, eat some wings, all that stuff.
Fun time.
When you guys are seeing this, if you guys have start-sits questions for us, drop them in the comments. We'll try to get back to as many as we can. Feel free to DM us on any social platform, any of that stuff. We just right now hit 10K followers on TikTok, so shout out to you guys. If you're not following us on TikTok, go follow us on TikTok.
Keep following over there.
But shout out to all you guys who are following us on TikTok. That was a really big milestone for us that we worked really hard on. So shout out to you guys. Julius Randle just got traded from the Knicks for Karl Anthony Towns. We just sat here and recorded an instant reaction to that. These are both going up at the same time. So if you guys want to see us talk about the trade, go check that out. I'll probably have it popping up here on the screen for you guys. And that's pretty much it. So thank you guys for watching.
Yes.
Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, check out all of our content on all the social platforms. Follow the Patreon, follow the TikTok, all that fun jubble. And with that,
BallGame.
BallGame.
Oh, I'm sweating my balls off.
It's hot as fuck.
Oh my God, bro.